Have you ever felt like you're stuck? Like no matter how hard you try, you're just spinning your wheels, getting nowhere? That was me. In my late 40s, I started to realize that no matter how much I tried to get ahead, whether that was with my career, my finances, or relationships, nothing seemed to click. I thought if I worked hard enough, got the right job, made enough money, everything would fall into place. But it didn't. And honestly, I didn't even see it coming. I had this belief, this bubble that kept me thinking that success would solve everything. But life has a way of shaking that belief up. Growing up, I wasn't the guy with the big house or the fancy car. I didn't have a flashy job or a career everyone would envy. I had a regular job. A decent one, but not the kind that would make anyone do a double take. And when it came to relationships, that was always a struggle for me. I couldn't figure it out. I went on dates, sure. Tried to be charming. But no matter how hard I tried, things never seemed to work out. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I used to look around and think, what do they have that I don't? Why is everyone else getting it right? My friends seemed to have it all together, great careers, perfect families, beautiful houses. And then there was me, just trying to get by. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I started wondering if I was missing something fundamental. Was I just not good enough? I remember thinking, maybe this is just how life is for me. Maybe I'm just not meant to have the things I want. Maybe love, success, happiness, that stuff's just for other people. I'm doing okay, but I'm not enough. I tried to push through it, of course. I focused on my job, put in more hours, tried to make more money. But it was never enough. I thought that if I just achieved enough, got a little more successful, a little more financially stable, that everything would change. That I'd finally feel like I was enough. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was missing. That I was still missing something big. But I didn't know what. I guess, in a way, I was trapped in this belief bubble. I thought that the more I worked, the more I earned, the more things would click. That if I just put in the effort, I'd finally be worthy of the things I wanted, like a better life, or a woman who could see past the surface and truly love me. But here's the thing about belief bubbles, they're fragile. And sometimes life has a way of popping them when you least expect it. Then everything changed when I met Emily. I wasn't looking for love, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just going through life, feeling stuck. But when she walked into my life, it was like a light had been turned on. I wasn't expecting it, but there she was. She was smart, funny, beautiful in a way that felt real, not superficial. And she saw something in me. For the first time in ages, someone actually saw me, not just the guy with a decent job or the one trying to make it, but me, just me. I remember our first date like it was yesterday. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet dinner at a small restaurant. But it felt different than any date I'd ever been on. She listened when I talked. She asked me questions, was genuinely interested in who I was, not just what I did. For the first time, I felt like I was enough, like I mattered. And the way she looked at me, it wasn't pity, it wasn't fake, it was real. I could see that she appreciated me for who I was, not who I was trying to be. I started thinking, maybe this is what I've been waiting for. Maybe this is the real thing. I'd spent so much of my life chasing success, trying to prove I was worthy of everything I wanted. But here she was, making me feel like I didn't have to try so hard. Maybe it wasn't about money or status. Maybe it was just about being myself. And she was here, choosing me. That felt like everything. As the days went by, it was like things were falling into place. I started to think, this is it. This is how it's supposed to be. We had fun, we laughed, we shared stories. There was something easy about being with her, something real. And for once, I wasn't so focused on what I was lacking. I wasn't worried about the next promotion or how much money I needed to make. With Emily, I felt complete in a way I hadn't felt in years. I thought to myself, maybe this is what I needed all along. Maybe I was looking in the wrong place. I didn't need all that external stuff, career, money, status. I just needed someone who could see me, who could love me for who I really was. Maybe this was the missing piece I'd been searching for my whole life. I began to feel like I was walking a tightrope. On one side was this growing desire to make everything work with her, to make her happy. But on the other side, I had this internal pressure to prove I could make it. To show that I could be successful, financially stable, the kind of guy who could offer her everything. And I couldn't figure out how to balance it. The more I worked, the more I felt like I was neglecting her. But the more I focused on her, the more I felt like I was giving up on my dreams, on the things I thought would make me happy. I started to wonder, is this it? Is this what love is? Compromise? Am I supposed to drop everything and just give her all my time? What if that means giving up the one thing I thought would fix everything? My career? My success? It wasn't that I didn't care about her. I did. I cared deeply. But I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions, and I didn't know how to make both sides happy. The worst part was, the more I withdrew, the more frustrated she got. And the more frustrated she got, the more I felt like I was failing. I kept thinking, why isn't this enough? Why can't she see that I'm doing this for us? But the truth is, I wasn't seeing her. I wasn't seeing her needs, her emotions, her desire to be with me, not just the successful version of me. And every time I missed that, it felt like I was losing a little more of what we had. I had a choice to make, but I didn't realize it yet. I didn't see how badly I was neglecting the relationship in favor of chasing something that, in the end, might not even matter. I began to feel like I was walking a tightrope. On one side was this growing desire to make everything work with her, to make her happy. But on the other side, I had this internal pressure to prove I could make it. To show that I could be successful, financially stable, the kind of guy who could offer her everything. And I couldn't figure out how to balance it. The more I worked, the more I felt like I was neglecting her. But the more I focused on her, the more I felt like I was giving up on my dreams, on the things I thought would make me happy. I started to wonder, is this it? Is this what love is? Compromise? Am I supposed to drop everything and just give her all my time? What if that means giving up the one thing I thought would fix everything? My career? My success? It wasn't that I didn't care about her. I did. I cared deeply. But I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions, and I didn't know how to make both sides happy. The worst part was, the more I withdrew, the more frustrated she got. And the more frustrated she got, the more I felt like I was failing. I kept thinking, why isn't this enough? Why can't she see that I'm doing this for us? But the truth is, I wasn't seeing her. I wasn't seeing her needs, her emotions, her desire to be with me, not just the successful version of me. And every time I missed that, it felt like I was losing a little more of what we had. I had a choice to make, but I didn't realize it yet. I didn't see how badly I was neglecting the relationship in favor of chasing something that, in the end, might not even matter. It wasn't long before I started to feel something wasn't right. The more I tried to balance work and Emily, the more I felt myself slipping away from both. I was giving her less and less of me, and it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I didn't know how to give her what she needed without losing everything else I'd worked for. But I didn't realize just how deep the problem was until it became too late. I remember one evening, she asked me, "Do you even want this? Do you want us?" I was stunned. I mean, of course, I wanted us, right? I was doing everything I could to make a future, wasn't I? But the look in her eyes, the disappointment, the hurt, I couldn't ignore it. It made me stop and think, what am I really doing? I thought I was doing this for her, for us. But all I was doing was keeping my focus on what I thought was important. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over her words in my mind, "Do you want us?" And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't present. Not really. I was so caught up in trying to fix things externally, trying to make enough money, to climb higher in my career, that I hadn't even stopped to ask what was happening in the relationship itself. I had been so focused on proving something to the world that I wasn't even being the partner she needed. I wasn't being the partner I wanted to be. I thought that if I could just get everything right on the outside, she would be happy. But happiness, real happiness, doesn't come from status or money. It comes from showing up for the person you care about. And I realized I hadn't been showing up. Not in the way she needed. I started questioning everything. Was I really doing the right thing? Was all this success worth it if it meant losing her? I thought I could have it all: work, success, love. But the truth is, I couldn't. Not without sacrificing the one thing that mattered most. I was so caught up in my own need for validation that I couldn't see that what Emily really wanted wasn't the guy with the fancy job, the guy who could provide everything. She wanted the real me. The guy who could be there, who could listen, who could share the journey with her. I had made a huge mistake. I had been so focused on building something I thought would fix me that I had completely overlooked the most important thing I had in front of me. And now, I was about to lose it. The hardest thing I've ever had to do was break up with Emily. I knew it was coming. I could feel it building up for weeks, but I kept putting it off. Every time I saw the look on her face, the frustration in her eyes, I knew the end was near. But I didn't know how to make it stop, how to make things right. The truth was, I was scared. Scared of losing her, but even more scared of facing the fact that I had failed her. One night, we sat down, and she just looked at me and said, "I can't keep doing this, you know. I can't keep waiting for you to show up." It was like a punch in the gut. I knew she was right, but I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to face the truth. The truth that I'd been so obsessed with making my life look perfect from the outside that I had completely ignored the emotional connection we needed. We talked for hours. She cried, and I just sat there, numb, unable to say anything that would make it better. I told her I was sorry, that I wanted to fix things, but deep down, I knew I was already too late. She didn't want apologies. She didn't need promises. She needed action. She needed me to show up, not as the guy who could write a big check or impress her with his accomplishments, but as the man who could be there for her, day in and day out. When she finally said it, "I think we need to break up," it was like a weight had been dropped on my chest. But strangely, I didn't feel angry or upset. I felt relieved. I knew it was the right thing. The painful thing, but the right thing. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I did. But I had to face the hard truth, that love isn't just about what you can give someone on paper. It's not about being the successful guy. It's about being real, about being present, about showing up when it counts. That night, I walked away feeling empty, but also a little bit freer. I had been living a lie, trying to be something I wasn't, and I had almost lost everything that mattered in the process. After the breakup, I spent weeks in a haze. It wasn't that I didn't have people around me to talk to, or that I didn't know what had happened. But the truth is, I didn't fully understand the depth of my mistakes until I was alone with my thoughts. For the first time in a long time, I had the space to really reflect. And it was hard. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the little moments with Emily, the way she'd look at me with frustration when I was too distracted to listen, the way her voice sounded when she asked me to just be present. It was like she was asking for something so simple, and I couldn't give it to her. I thought about all those times I had chosen work over her. All the times I had made excuses. I was always saying, just a little longer, just a little more time, just one more project, one more promotion. But what I didn't realize was, I was choosing that over her. Over us. And I couldn't help but wonder, why did I think success would fill the gap? Why did I think being successful would make me worthy of love and respect? I had everything backward. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been living in this bubble. The idea that success and money would solve my problems was just a crutch. I was so focused on the wrong things, chasing some version of success that wasn't even mine, that I had lost sight of what really mattered. I didn't need more success. I needed more balance. I needed to connect with the people around me, to be emotionally available, to give love and receive it, without all the walls I had built up around myself. I realized that Emily wasn't asking for something extraordinary. She was asking for me to show up, to be there in the everyday moments. She wasn't asking for grand gestures or promises of a perfect future, she just wanted me to be with her. And I couldn't do that because I was too busy trying to prove something to the world that didn't even matter. I had spent so much time focused on fixing my external world, trying to get everything just right, that I had neglected the one thing that truly mattered, being the kind of partner who was present, who was emotionally invested. It wasn't until the breakup that I understood, real love, real success starts from within. You have to be whole first, before you can give yourself to someone else. And that's when it hit me, I had to change. Not just for the relationship, but for myself. If I wanted to ever experience real love again, I had to start with me. I had to learn how to show up, how to balance my life, how to focus on what truly mattered. I needed to get rid of this constant need to prove myself, to justify my worth through work and success. I had to be real. The weeks after the breakup were tough, but they were also necessary. I'd spent so much of my life running from my insecurities, my fears, my doubts, burying them under work, money, success. But now, with everything stripped away, I had no choice but to face them head on. And let me tell you, it was uncomfortable. But it was also liberating. I started to focus on myself, but not in the way I used to. I wasn't trying to fix anything externally, like getting that next promotion or buying a bigger house. I started working on what was inside, my mindset, my emotional health, my ability to connect with people. I began spending more time with friends, listening more, being present in conversations. And it wasn't easy at first. I had to fight this nagging feeling that I wasn't doing enough, that I needed to hustle harder. But I realized that hustling wasn't going to fix the hole I'd been trying to fill. I even started seeing a therapist. I thought it was just about getting over the breakup, but what I didn't expect was that it would help me see all the things I'd been ignoring for so long. How I had been letting fear control me, how I had been pushing people away by overworking, how I had been avoiding vulnerability because I thought it was a weakness. And through all that, I finally understood that real growth doesn't come from external achievements. It comes from understanding and accepting who you really are. I also realized something that hit me hard. I hadn't been giving myself permission to be human. I had been chasing an image of perfection, of success, and in the process, I'd lost sight of the fact that real life, real connection is messy. It's about showing up, even when you don't have it all together. I wasn't supposed to be perfect. I just needed to be present. So, I started making small changes. I began to work less. I set boundaries. I made more time for the people I cared about, including myself. I took weekends off to recharge. I learned how to say no when I was spread too thin. I made a conscious effort to check in with my feelings and emotions, to be honest with myself about what I wanted and needed, not just what society or my ego told me I should want. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It took time. But I began to feel lighter. More in control, more at peace with who I was. I started to realize that my value wasn't tied to my career or how much money I made. My value came from who I was at my core, from how I treated others, and how I treated myself. I didn't need to keep chasing something to prove I was worthy. I was already worthy, and in all of this, I started to understand what love really was. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the perfect relationship. It was about being real with someone, being vulnerable, being there for them when it mattered most, and giving them the space to do the same. A few months passed since the breakup, and though I was focusing on my growth, I still thought about Emily all the time. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss her. There were days when I felt that ache, the one that makes you wonder if you've lost something that can't be replaced. But I kept reminding myself that I needed to stay focused on myself. I needed to keep going, keep growing, and keep healing. Then one day, I got a message from Emily. It was short, just a simple hi, how are you? But it stopped me in my tracks. I hadn't heard from her since the breakup, and I wasn't sure how to respond. A part of me wanted to dive into everything we'd been through, to say how much I had changed, how I had learned from my mistakes. But another part of me knew that I couldn't rush this. Not anymore. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm doing well. How about you?" It was a small thing, but it felt like a big step. I wasn't trying to prove anything or justify myself. I was just being present. And in a strange way, I felt like I had finally let go of all the pressure I had been carrying around for so long. Over the next few weeks, we exchanged a few messages, and then we talked on the phone. The conversations were easy, comfortable, nothing like the tension and stress that had existed before. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And slowly, we started to rebuild a connection. Not as two people trying to fix something, but as two people who had both done some hard work on themselves. It's been a year since that coffee date with Emily. A year since we started rebuilding something that neither of us expected, but both of us needed. And now, looking back, I realized that this time apart wasn't just about healing from the breakup. It was about learning how to love, not just each other, but ourselves. The relationship we have now is different. It's not perfect, and it doesn't need to be. We've both been through too much to expect perfection, and honestly, that's what makes it so much better. We know what's important now. We know that love isn't something you can force or fabricate. It's something you have to nurture every day, not by grand gestures, but by showing up, being present, and being real. It's been a year since that coffee date with Emily. A year since we started rebuilding something that neither of us expected, but both of us needed. And now, looking back, I realized that this time apart wasn't just about healing from the breakup. It was about learning how to love, not just each other, but ourselves. The relationship we have now is different. It's not perfect, and it doesn't need to be. We've both been through too much to expect perfection, and honestly, that's what makes it so much better. We know what's important now. We know that love isn't something you can force or fabricate. It's something you have to nurture every day, not by grand gestures, but by showing up, being present, and being real. We still have challenges. We still have our disagreements, but they don't carry the same weight they once did. Now, when we argue, we're not fighting to win. We're fighting to understand, to get to the heart of the issue, to move forward. And that's because we both learned the same lesson, that love isn't about changing someone to fit your expectations. It's about accepting them for who they are and being willing to grow together, not apart. I'm not the same guy I was when I first met Emily. I'm different. I'm better. I've learned to balance my life, to focus on what truly matters, to take care of my mental and emotional health, to be more present, and to be more real. I don't chase success the way I used to. I don't chase anything anymore. I just live, and I love. And the funny thing is, I've never felt more successful. Emily and I talk about the future now, and it's not about the things we used to obsess over, money, status, the perfect life. It's about the little things, the quiet mornings together, the moments when we can just be, the way we've learned to communicate, and the way we support each other's dreams. We're not trying to build a perfect life anymore. We're building a real life, and that's more than I ever thought I needed. I look back at the mistakes I made, and I don't regret them. I wish I hadn't made them, but I don't regret them. They taught me so much. I learned that sometimes we have to lose something to realize what we truly had. Sometimes we have to break before we can heal. And sometimes we have to step away from the pursuit of success to realize that happiness doesn't come from what we achieve. It comes from how we love and how we live, and that's the most valuable lesson I could have learned.